دلوقتي هنبتدي الجلسة الخامسة لينا في اديوتك. الجلسة بعنوان استجابة التعليم الفني والتدريب المهني للمعايير الجديدة والتحول الرقمي والاقتصادات الخضراء وتغيير المناخ. رئيس الجلسة اللي هيشرفنا أستاذ أحمد العشماوي، عضو اللجنة الاستشارية لتطوير التعليم الفني بوزارة التربية والتعليم الفني. اتفضل يا فندم. أعضاء الجلسة اللي هينورونا النهاردة دكتور مجدي وهبة والأستاذ أحمد خطابي، مستر مايك دوميانو، Mr. Kari Matila, Mr. Oliver Spagatans, and Mr. Hiromishi Katamaya هيبقى معانا اونلاين. استاذ احمد عشماوي اتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أغنية مبهجة قوي ومليانة بوزيتيف فايبس، يعني والواحد بيبقى فرحان جدا لما بيشوف الطلبة دي، وزي ما بنشوفهم بره في المعرض امبارح والنهارده. أحب أشكر حضراتكم لوجودكم النهارده لتاني يوم، ووجود حضراتكم بالذات يعني ده معناه إن حضراتكم مهتمين باللي احنا بنعمله والتحويل والإصلاحات اللي بنحاول نعملها، وإنكم حضراتكم يعني شركاء أساسيين للجميع المعنيين بإصلاح وتطوير وتحويل منظومة التعليم الفني والتدريب المهني في مصر. الجلسة دي هنتكلم فيها عن التغيرات اللي بتحصل في العالم من حوالينا واللي بقت واقع جديد، وهنشوف ازاي منظومة التعليم الفني والتدريب المهني تحاول تتعامل مع الواقع الجديد ده. لما دكتور علي شمس الدين واللجنة المنظمة كانت بتحط البرنامج، كل حاجة من التوبكس او من الحاجات اللي هنناقشها النهارده كانت ممكن تتعمل في جلسة لوحدها، لكن للأسف لظروف الوقت إن كنا محدودين ضمناهم مع بعض. الثلاث حاجات مهمة جدا. كنا هنتكلم عن الرقمنة ومعناها إيه للتعليم الفني، وإزاي التعليم الفني بيجهز نفسه للجزئية دي، الاقتصاد الأخضر، تغيير المناخ. كل الحاجات دي زي ما قلت كانت ممكن تتناقش في جلسة، كل واحدة الجلسة لوحدها. لما بنتكلم على التحويل الرقمي او الرقمنه، دايما اول حاجه بنفكر فيها التعليم عن بعد او التعليم اونلاين، بس ده جزء واحد، يعني جزء بسيط قوي من الفكره. احنا عندنا لما هنتكلم على الديجيتاليزيشن في حاجات كتير قوي، التحول الرقمي اللي بيحصل في الصناعه واللي هيأثر على كل القطاعات، ازاي هنجهز نفسنا لده، تغيير بعض المحتوى ليكون رقمي. التعليم الفني كمان مختلف شوية عن أي نوع من التعليم التاني، إن هو محتاج يبقى في تدريب عملي، والطالب أو الطالبة لازم يكونوا مارسوا اللي هم بيتعلموه. ففي تحديات بتواجه النظام ده من التعليم الفني لما بنتكلم على الرقمنه، وان لازم يبقى في بلندد ليرنينج، يعني حاجات كتيره قوي. الانفراستراكشر المطلوبه او البنيه التحتيه عشان نقدر نعمل تعليم يعني في جزء منه محتوى رقمي. الانفراستراكشر مهم جدا، الاتاحه لكل الاماكن. ففي تحديات مخصوصه بنتكلم عليها في التعليم الفني. لما هنتكلم على الاقتصاد الأخضر، احنا عارفين عنه ايه المعلومات اللي معروفة عنه في مصر، ازاي هنجهز نفسنا لكل الحاجات دي. هنحاول نناقشها سريعا ونتعلم كمان من التجارب الدولية في بعض الحاجات والمبادرات الإقليمية والدولية اللي ممكن تساهم في الجزئية دي. وطبعا تغيير المناخ والأهمية اللي احنا شايفينها، وايه الدور اللي احنا ممكن نلعبه كأشخاص معنيين بالتعليم الفني والتدريب المهني، وازاي نستمر. يعني طبعا السنة دي هي حاجة مهمة لأن مصر هتستضيف الكوب 27 في نوفمبر 22، لكن طبعا الموضوع مستمر ولازم نشوف ايه دور منظومه التعليم الفني والتدريب المهني في الجزئيه دي. انا حابب برضك اقول ان احنا الموضوع كوفيد 19 وايه التاثيرات اللي حصلت فيها في الحاجات دي وفي الذات في الرقمنه. لكن طبعا يعني لو اتكلم على وزاره التعليم والتعليم الفني، كان في اوريدي رؤيه للموضوع ده، وفي قبل كوفيد يعني، وفي نائب وزير للتحول الرقمي والاي سي تي، فكان في رؤيه من الاول عند دكتور طارق شوقي للجزئيه دي. التعليم الفني حتى الاستراتيجيه التعليم الفني 2.0 كان موجود موضوع الرقمي، لكن لما جه كوفيد الموضوع تسرع وابتدينا نفكر بطريقه مختلفه، ومحتاجين يبقى في رؤيه او استراتيجيه مخصوصه للرقمنه. مش عايز اطول على حضراتكم، وعايز اسمع، وطبعا حضراتكم عايزين تسمعوا من الخبراء اللي معانا من جهات مختلفه ومن دول مختلفه. اعرفهم سريعا. المهندس او الدكتور مجدي وهبه هو خبير اول في مشروع TVET Egypt الممول من الاتحاد الاوروبي، وطبعا صديقي الدكتور مجدي طبعا معروف في مجال التنميه، واشتغل مع جهات دوليه كتير قوي زي ILO والUN ودوله كندا، واخيرا في TVET Egypt. سعيد بوجود حضرتك يا دكتور. معانا الاستاذ ادهم خطابي، مسؤول اداره مشروعات في بنك التعمير الالماني KfW. وانا ليا الحظ طبعا اني اشتغل مع ادهم بقالنا سنتين، بنعمل مبادرات، وادهم هيكلمنا عليها. معانا مستر مايك دامينو اللي كان موجود في الجلسه اللي فاتت، المدير القومي للناشونال education initiatives في كورسيرا. Welcome to the panel. We have also معنا Mr. Carey Matila, Senior Advisor للتعليم الفني والتدريب المهني في أمنية for Education Partnerships من فنلندا. Welcome on the panel. We have Mr. Oliver Spatignas. Sorry for the pronunciation. Oliver is the team leader for a brand new project between the Ministry of Education and Technical Education and the KfW, German government and the EU. مشروع جديد لسه ماضيين الاتفاقية عليه تنفيذ المشروع يوم الأحد اللي فات، وأوليفر هو رئيس فريق العمل في المشروع ده، وعنده خبرات كبيرة في مجال التعليم الفني والتدريب المهني. Online we have Mr. Hiromichi Katamaya, program specialist في section of youth literacy and skills development في اليونسكو، مشارك معانا من باريس. I welcome you to the session remotely. هبتدي ببعض الأسئلة، ومعلش لو حاولنا من عربي لإنجليزي في بعض الحاجات. أنا شايف إن معظم الناس مش المصريين مش حاطين أجهزة الترجمة، لكن هنبتدي نسأل بعض الأسئلة وهبتدي بمستر مايك. Again, we just listened to your very interesting presentation in the previous session, but in this session I'd like also to get your advice about the digitalization process and online courses from a perspective of technical education in particular. How does this sort of support students from technical education and what we need as stakeholders, as decision makers, to concentrate on this issue.
Great, thank you for the question, Chair, and thank you for listening to my English again. Apologies, but my Arabic is a little bit rusty. I do have slides. If the slides come up, that would be great. So let's start by talking about what we see on a global level, and then I'll talk about what we really see as being the biggest change agent for transformation in educational institutions. And this comes back, I've had 25 years experience of digital transformation in primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, and higher education. So I'm drawing on some of that experience as well. But if we start with the challenge, we've already talked about the challenge of COVID. I think we're seeing what we call a double disruption of COVID and automation. And businesses around the world are actually accelerating their automation processes because of the impact of COVID. And some of the colleagues in the last session, thank you, they talked about having to adapt to a ever rapid changing world where industry is changing very, very quickly. And the impact of this is huge. The figures we have on this slide are just for the Middle East and North Africa, and we've seen greater impact of COVID and in automation in some of these emerging markets. So the poverty divide has increased, a number of jobs have been displaced. So it's really up to TVET to look to address some of these challenges. The slide here shows which jobs are most at risk of automation. This comes from Bloomberg. So the larger red circles are those jobs that have either low or no education, and they're at most risk of automation. And so what TVET's role here is, we would argue, is to help the youth that would typically be affected by those low-paid, low-skilled jobs and help them into those more highly skilled, more highly paid jobs. And the education systems have the responsibility to deliver this. And it's really not an easy task. TVET has to do this, and colleges have to do this with very limited resources and in a very challenging situation. And so I want to talk a little bit about a project that we've just completed that has some parallels here. So over the last 3 months, we've been working with about 70 universities across the Arab world, many universities in Egypt actually. They were facing a similar challenge. The world is changing, they need to adapt. Universities are not known for adapting quickly, so they wanted to understand what they could do. And of course, they asked Coursera for Coursera's help here. And our answer was, address your aspiring leaders. So with the organization, a member organization that looks after these universities, we came together and we developed a set of learning programs, a set of pathways to help their aspiring leaders and their leaders with digital transformation. And so over the last 3 months, we've had maybe 70 universities over 15 countries go through this program. You see an example of some of the courses that they're taking here on screen. So these are courses from the top universities and the top companies, and there's soft skills, there's business skills, there's technical skills, there's data skills. These are the types of things that leaders and aspiring leaders need to be able to help their organizations transform. So of the 200 to 300 deans and aspiring leaders that went through this program, a number have already received certificates, and these are busy professionals who took the time to invest. They weren't told they had to do it, they chose to invest the time because they recognized the value of investing in themselves and the value of investing in their institutions. We just last week we actually surveyed all of the participants, and 96% of them came back saying they would like to continue with the program. So that's a fairly good number in our book. So I guess my point is that if TVET is looking to transform, whatever that transformation is, it needs to start with aspiring leaders. Not even necessarily the top leadership, but those leaders who will become the top leadership in the next 3 to 5 years. If we can invest in helping them to understand what transformation looks like, digital transformation or otherwise, then they can affect that transformation from within. So that's one thing. The other thing that we see happening is using these platforms, like Coursera or other ones, to connect local industry and education. So if you've got universities that have their own learning platforms or are using platforms like Coursera, they can go to their local industry and ask the industry to create courses on the platform as well, which is exactly what Coursera does. So I would say it's a combination of invest in the aspiring leaders, help them be the change agent, and work with your local industry to actually create the content and the courses that they feel are needed to serve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. كذا رسالة مهمة. أولا الجراف اللي وراه لنا مايك وإزاي نحول بعض المهن اللي ممكن هيقل العدد أو هتندثر، ممكن نحولها للمهن اللي عليها إقبال في الفترات اللي جاية. دي مهمة جدا، ممكن نحتاج نراجعها. الرسالة الثانية إن احنا نستثمر وندعم بناء قدرات للمدراء أو متخذي القرار الملهمين اللي ممكن يساعدوا التحول اللي هيحصل. ده مهم جدا. والحاجة الثانية الشراكة مع الحاجة الثالثة الشراكة بين مؤسسات التعليم الفني والقطاع الخاص على المنصات الرقمية والبرامج، إن احنا نحاول مع بعض نطور برامج رقمية أو برامج أونلاين في المنصات المختلفة. ثلاث رسائل مهمين. هنتقل دلوقتي للأستاذ أدهم خطابي اللي هيكلمنا. يا ريت تكلمنا عن بعض المبادرات اللي الKfW وبنك التعمير الألماني بيتعاون فيها في مجال التعليم الفني والتدريب المهني مؤخرا مع وزارة التعليم والتعليم الفني. في طبعا مبادرة لإنشاء صندوق متخصص للرقمنة للديجيتاليزيشن، وطبعا المشروع اللي أنا اتكلمت عليه في الأول اللي أطلقناه اللي هو النهوض بالتعليم الفني والتدريب المهني TVET من خلال إنشاء مراكز تميز أو centers of competence في مجال ال Renewable energy وال energy efficiency. تفضل.
Thank you, Dr. Ashmawi, for the introduction and the moderation of the session. Actually, KfW, the German Development Bank, is represented in Egypt via an office in Cairo, one of 80 offices around the world, since it is represented in Egypt since more than 30 years now. May I give, like, in 1 minute, a short introduction about the bank in Egypt? The bank is engaged in the German cooperation projects in relation to its sectors for education, TVET, sustainable development for SMEs, energy efficiency, water, sanitation, waste management, and lastly, mobility. Actually, the KfW is engaged in TVET in close cooperation with the Ministry of Education and Technical Education via many products. The first one was lastly signed, the consultancy contract last Sunday, and the ministry's premises. It is focusing, it's called TVET 1, focusing on building rehabilitation and renovation of 3 centers of competence in various locations in Egypt, one in Upper Egypt in Aswan, one in Red Sea area near Hurghada, one to be also mentioned, and then a second component of rehabilitating and updating other TSS all over the country. KFW is also engaged in digitalization, which is also a very important and main topic and priority included in the Technical Education 2.0 strategy of the ministry. The engagement in TVET comes in form of investment and infrastructure, plus a digitalization on a micro level via a debt swap offered in cooperation between the government of Germany and the government of Egypt. The engagement is focusing on 3 funding windows on many levels, could be on the national level, on the admin level, and on the school level, varying from basic e-learning platforms via training for administration staff, systems in the school itself, going to linking the schools via glass fiber cables, IT infrastructure, including but not limited to virtual reality tools, for example. That leads us to the transformation ranging from or transformation tools and contents ranging from internet lines up until offering tablets to prepare students for the digitalized economy coming up. This is indeed in cooperation also with the ministry on the selection and the choice of schools in which the projects will be implemented. The schools also here comes with a sustainability characteristic for the management and the staff of the schools, as well as the students and their families, to maintain the schools and the equipment offered during the project in order to enhance and to ensure a sustainable continuation of the project even after phasing out. Because this project is looking forward for the future, not a specific or limited time span of implementation. In fact, or indeed, all this planning should be aligned with the strategy of the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology in order to avoid any implementation of any measures that are not compatible with the Egypt ICT strategy. To conclude my point here, KFW in its digitalization improvement fund, which is the debt swap project I was talking about for TVET, is focusing actually on 2 areas. The first area focuses more on transforming knowledge. The second one is on changing and upgrading the student skills. Under the first point, which is transferring knowledge, it is used in a digital way to enhance the experience and provide the expertise in a safer way. For example, giving the expertise to the client, to the students in a welding environment, but via virtual reality, which is a safer place and will avoid fire or heat hazards. The other points will be creating platforms for knowledge transfer that are easy to access anywhere and anytime. The second area, which is changing the upgrading of the student skills and occupation according to the challenges in the digital world. For example, the famous TUMO Center, which is financed by KFW in a pilot center in Berlin. The center is a real example of modern TVET embedded with high level of digitalization, and it's worth mentioning that the idea was also first born in Armenia and then spread in many countries all over the world. Thank you for your attendance, and thank you, Dr. Ashmawi.
Thank you very much, Adham. Again, 2 issues here, as Adham mentioned, a very strong cooperation with KFW and other partners in digitalization and knowledge transfer in this area, looking into infrastructure for schools, content development, obviously capacity building in that area, very important. I think the fund is a debt swap worth 41 million euros. The second, of course, initiative is the establishment of 3 centers of competence in renewable energy and energy efficiency. 2 have already been decided in Aswan and the Red Sea in Hurghada, and the third one will be decided soon. Thank you, Adham. Now ننتقل للتوبيك الثاني أو عن الحديث عن الاقتصاد الأخضر, and I would like to ask Mr. Kari Matilja from Omnea in Finland. I'd like to get your perspective of what you are doing in Finland and in the schools. I understand a lot of integration in your curricula and awareness about the green economy and green skills. So your experience and your advice to Egypt. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude for the invitation. I think this kind of conferences are very important, and it is an honor to be here to share some of the experiences of our world. I also would like to express my gratitude for the great number of people who have shared with me their knowledge and their experience in the field. And perhaps I can mention one person, Dr. Megahead, who I had a chance to discuss with last fall, who shared with me his understanding and vision about the technical and vocational education. It's been a great time to listen to all the presentations, and I've learned something, so there's something for me to take home also. I have a little presentation here, so let's see if we get it going. Yes, greening of vocational education. And I would like to take you through some things, and I'm taking you to a discussion about a little bit more hands-on, and I will also be talking about the benefits of greening. But before I go there, I want to show you just what's the value of good vocational education. Just about a week ago, we learned that Finland is the happiest country in the world for the 5th year in a row. We are the 2nd in human capital. We are the 3rd most innovative country. And that's due to the high level of education we have. That's due to the very strong emphasis we have had on vocational education. The discussions I've had here tell me that Egypt is on its road to very good and strong vocational education. I've been talking about why we should have greening. I'll be talking about what is greening in practice, how to do it, and then I will also discuss a little bit about who should be doing that one, to give you some ideas. Why? If everybody in this world would have the standard of living that we have in Finland, we would actually need 4.3 globes to provide us the materials, the services, the food, and all that stuff. So we need to do something because we only have one globe. Why? It is about business profits. Greening is good business. It is very good business. I'll give you some examples later. But it is not just about the cost as often is thought about. To me personally, under the present circumstances in the world, education and greening are also tools for peace. It is said that the 3rd World War will be on water, and I don't want to see that one. So we need a roadmap. And a roadmap is great, but then we need people to build the road. And vocational education is in the core of building the road nationwide on every person. So what to do? First of all, we need to build attitude. If there is no attitude, all the other elements that we propose will not have value. So let's build attitude. After we build attitude, we can create awareness. These two things are the elements that should be incorporated in all vocational education. Because when we have attitude and we have awareness, then we can reach action. When we have all those A's, AAA you could call them, we can get to examples like this one here. We all know the standard toilet. If there is a little drip on the standard toilet, water running all the time, that means that the toilet is wasting water on an average about 260,000 liters every year. In Finland, that costs about 900 euros. In Finland, the cost is not the issue. The water is not the issue. But for a big part of the world, the water is the issue. And how do we get those little dribbles that are running there to recognize and to fix so that they don't become a cost, so that they don't not wasting our natural resources? That's the how. It all starts with example. And when I say example, I'm talking about the example from people. We copy things. Children copy from their parents. Students copy from their teachers. Students copy from the examples at the workplaces. We need collaboration. Greening of vocational education is a cross-cutting thing. It is not a 5-hour lecture. Greening should be all over education, whether that is mathematics, whether that is baking, whether that is welding. Greening should be all over there. Practical examples, which means that we just shouldn't be talking about how it should be, how you should think, but we should really show hands-on what it is all about. Remember that 260,000 liters I had a little while ago? The first person to notice that leakage is actually the housekeeping lady in hotels, either the children or the parents at homes. So that kind of example should be shown to people because there is money related. And then we need constructive feedback. Instead of blaming, why didn't you do, we should go to the point where we help people to learn through, okay, this is a point of learning. Again, we get to the learning element. We will need the curriculum because we need to incorporate everything throughout the cross-cutting elements to subject content. So that's important, that it is also in the written form. And we need to develop educational systems. There's been a lot of discussion about developing educational systems, a lot of discussion about teacherships and teachers, and that's something we need to work on. We are working in collaboration, in strategic partnership with Tahil, which is helping the Egyptian vocational education to improve, and we are their partner in that one. An example from Egypt. Last fall I was visiting here and I was able to visit some vocational schools. And from one school I learned that over the course of about 6 years, their approach about the list of things you see here had led to the point that the companies their students were working in had been able to reach savings in different forms in total of about 100 million Egyptian pounds because of attitude, awareness, action. So there is money available. Who should we have here? Well, first of all, we need to have the student who starts to look around. That's an attitude. We need to have the teacher to promote the things. That's the awareness. We need to have the work-based learning, the examples and supporters. That's the action. And then we need you, because we need the management, how to lead the school development to get things done. And that's the culture of the school. Thank you. I'm sorry I was kind of a little bit sad almost on my discussion, but this is so close to my heart, it is so important to me. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'll be here all day long. Please just come and ask me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kari, for this interesting and heartfelt presentation. Again, very important messages here for technical education and generally, of course, I like the observation about, yes, we need a roadmap, and TVET graduates and students will be part of building this road, and this is important. What we need to do, change attitudes, create awareness, and of course take actions. That's interesting, and the integration of everything related to greening within all curricula. I think this is something that we should think about. And last but not least, of course, the fact that TVET contributes to the fact that Finland is the happiest country in the world. Interesting. Thank you. Now I move to Mr. Oliver. Oliver has just moved to Egypt a few weeks ago. He will be here hopefully for the next 4 years. So it's interesting to get your perspective about what you've noticed so far, what we are doing, and some observations from your side about the topics we're discussing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Schmabi, for the invitation and the opportunity to present you my ideas and reflections. I kindly would like to add that I have already worked 12 years before in Egypt, so I'm quite aware of the situation, but nevertheless, I would now like to share with you my reflection. When I received the invitation first, the word which falls in my eye was the word response, TVET response. And then I saw on the other side all the developments, green economy, digital transformation, COVID, and so on. And my first conclusion was that TVET has to rethink its role in a constant changing world under the condition of uncertainty. We are no longer certain what will be the future. And to give you a simple sample from the presentation of a Scottish Skill Development Initiative, they were mentioning that 30% of the pupils which are entering secondary education nowadays will work later in jobs which are nowadays not existing. This is the dimension of change and uncertainty we have ahead of us. And this, of course, raised the question, what is the response, or let's say, in other words, what will be the future role or the potential role in TVET? And my first conclusion is that TVET can no longer hold on a position to say we are supplying the labor market with graduates, with qualified people. When it is so quickly changing, then the TVET qualification and every specialization needs to move on forward and include as soon as possible the real world development. And when I'm looking to the technical
Recording
education,
in progress.
Pardon? When I'm looking to the technical education strategy and what was introduced so far, then I can conclude at the moment with the applied technical schools, you are following a program to enrich the curricula, the learning processes with a focus to the real world, to the business world, and on the other side, very important, by the practical stays, by the apprenticeships, the young students can, in their personal development, in their character formation be set in a situation where they learn how to socialize in the adult world. This is a very important aspect for the applied technical schools. Now, on the other side, we are now looking with our project towards setting up center of competences. And with this center of competences, which are somehow aligned with additional learning times, we have the opportunity to integrate exactly those topics which are in the headline: green economy, digital transformation, lifelong learning, entrepreneurial learning, in the curricula of these additional 2 years. And the outcome of students from this center of competences will more or less close or address the gap between the current TVET graduates and the university engineering or engineers graduates. And when we are looking for the demand from the economy or from the different sectors, the focus for the project I'm at the moment dealing with is the renewable energy and energy efficiency. This is an emerging market. We really don't know what kind of jobs there will be in the future. We know maybe by the value chain what kind of task can be covered by this area, but in fact we don't know what are even the names of the jobs. So we are in a situation to deal with this uncertainty. For us it will be very important to bring the local companies on board. This is all foreseen with the Center of Competences, and only together with the companies we can drive forward to set up a qualitative high vocational qualification in the area of renewable energy and energy efficiency, and the ground for it is by the Center of Competence model developed by the Ministry of Education already there, and I'm looking forward to make use of it and to fill it together with you, Dr. Ashmawi, in a very sensible, successful way, so that we can later be proud of the first graduates from this Center of Competences. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oliver, very much for your intervention. Again, some important messages about the cooperation with the private sector in the models with applied technology schools and the COCs that are about to be established, integration of all these new skills and competencies within the new system. You are optimistic that what is being done in Technical Education 2.0 is in the right direction, but there is also very much a lot of uncertainty, and as you mentioned, there's even jobs that we don't know the names of at the moment, and we have to figure that out together. Thank you. Now I move, we've listened أو اتكلمنا مع تجارب دولية مختلفة. دلوقتي هننتقل للدكتور مجدي وهبة ويقول لنا على بعض التجارب اللي حصلت في الجرينينج او جرين ايكونوميز، الاقتصاد الاخضر ومهارات الاقتصاد الاخضر في مصر من خلال مشروع تيفت ايجيبت الممول من الاتحاد الاوروبي والحكومه المصريه.
شكرا دكتور احمد، شكرا للدكتور علي عبد اللطيف. دايما اخر واحد بيتكلم بيبقى اصعب واحد. في حد بعد حضرتك؟ في حد؟ طب كويس عشان يبقى مش انا اخر واحد يعني. انا I will switch in Arabic, maybe I will use bilingual. يعني دايما لما بنيجي نتكلم على الاقتصاد الاخضر او الاقتصاد الازرق او في سواء الجرين جوبز او البلو جوبز والجرين انتربرينورشيب والبلو انتربرينورشيب، تبقى عنينا كلنا على ال SDGs goal. وانا نفسي في المدارس كلها بتاعه التعليم الفني نبقى عندنا اللوحه دي تبقى موجوده بالعربي، الولاد كلهم يشوفوها، ودي موجوده على السايت بتاع UNB اوبن سورس وباللغه العربيه. حتى في جيمز في بلاين كارد كده زي الكوتشينه بتتلعب عشان الولاد يعرفوا ايه هي الاس دي جيز، هي اللي هي اهداف التنميه المستدامه. ولما مصر دايما بنتكلم خطه 2030 هي مبنيه على الاهداف دي. يمكن لو احنا بصينا واحنا في، يعني انا بعتبره محفل كبير ان كل الخبراء، الجهات الحكوميه، الجهات الديفلوبمنت بارتنر، شركاء التنميه، القطاع الخاص اللي متعلقين بالتيفت التعليم الفني والتدريب المهني مجتمعين في مكان واحد. وده شيء يعني صعب لكنه تم، والاصعب ان احنا نحافظ عليه. يبقى ده يعني سنويا بيتعمل الموضوع ده. يمكن احنا في التعليم عندنا جول نمبر 4 ده كلنا بنشتغل عليه، وما بنيجي نكتب الدوكيومنتس بتاعتنا بنحط نمبر 4. ويمكن نمبر 17 احنا بنحققه في اللي احنا بنعمله ده، اللي هي البارتنرشيب. وزي ما قال امبارح الدكتور خالد عبد العظيم، عاوزينها في 4 بيز، يعني برايفت بابليك بارتنرشيب. دي النقطة المهمة. طيب لما الاقتصاد الأخضر دي كلمات حلوة بنستخدمها، الجرين ايكونومي. ويمكن احنا عندنا في الاس دي جيز الخضر دول اللي هم الموجودين، اللي هو جول نمبر 3 الجود هيلث والويل بينج، الكلايمت اكشن نمرة 13 واللايف اون لاند نمرة 15، وعندنا 14 اللي هو اللايف بيلو ووتر بيلو اوشنز. دي كلها متعلقة بالبيئة والمحافظة على البيئة. فيمكن لما بنيجي نقول ايه هو الجرين ايكونومي، هو اقتصاد بيهدف الى الحد من المخاطر البيئية. ويمكن احنا شايفين الجو في مصر والسنة اللي فاتت في القطب الشمالي الحرارة وصلت ل 28 و29، البلاد اللي بنسمع عنها انها هتغرق. كل الحاجات دي متعلقة بالجرين ايكونومي. وبالتالي طالما بنتكلم عن ايكونومي بنتكلم عن جوبز. طيب احنا عندنا دلوقتي في حته مهمه لما بنيجي نقول عاوزين نعمل تخدير للتعليم الفني، نعمل ودي الصوره المشهوره، الجو، وحدات الطاقه الشمسيه، اللي هي الزراعات المغطاه، طاقه الرياح، السورتنج بتاع الجاربج بتاعنا والريوزنج. كل الحاجات دي بنسمع عنها كتير، بس احنا عاوزين نطبقها بقى جوه التيفيت او ازاي بتطبق. ويمكن السكيلز اللي هي تخدم صناعات كتيره. دلوقتي الجرين ايكونومي داخل في الزراعه، داخل في الاندستري، داخل في صناعه السياحه، في الاي تي، في كل الامور دي في جرين جوبز احنا محتاجينها. انا عشان ما اطولش عليكم، يمكن البرزنتيشن ده موجود يعني هيبقى يتعرض على البلاتفورم، لكن انا عاوز اكمل اللي مستر ماكين يعني ماي كوليج في البانل ابتدى بيه. طيب احنا هنا في تيفت ايجيبت او في المشروع بتاعنا بنعمل ايه فيما يتعلق بالجرين جوبز؟ اول حاجه كل المناهج اللي هي مبنيه على الجدارات الاوكيبيشنال والكومبتنس بيزد كورسز، كل المناهج دي فيها اجزاء خاصه بالبيئه والمحافظه على البيئه وما يطلق عليه الاوش، الاوكيبيشنال سيفتي اند هيلث.
لأن جزء من التدمير اللي بيحصل في الصحة سببه بعض الانبعاثات الحرارية أو الأبخرة أو الدخان أو الباودرز اللي بتطلع من صناعات كتيرة. يمكن أبسطها وتاخدوش بالكم منها النجارة. البودرة بتاعت النجارة دي بتأثر على الصدر، المايننج، المناجم، اللي الناس اللي في منطقة المنيا بيشوفوا التكلس الرئوي بيحصل قد ايه. فكل ده احنا محتاجين ان احنا ننشئ هي جديدة قديمة، ان انا اولا اوفق كل السكيلز اللي موجودة عندي ان يبقى فيها اجزاء متعلقة بالجريننج، زي ال 3R بتاعت الويست اللي هي بنقول عليها دايما ريديوز، قلل استخدام الخامات، وبعدين ريوز اللي انت بتقلله استخدمه، واللي بيطلع في الاخر سكراب اعمل له ريسايكلينج. ويمكن في تجربة انا لسه كنت بتكلم مع دلوقتي على كان في مبادرة أو فكرة كانت ابتدت سنة 20 مع بنك الكويت الوطني، وموضوع كورونا شوية عطلها، اللي هو ما يطلق عليه البايوجاز. احنا ما عندناش في مصر بايوجاز تكنيشن، يعني تكنيشن خاصين بوحدات البايوجاز. في بعض المبادرات الصغيرة اللي اتعملت. يمكن انا كان ليا الشرف شاركت في مبادرة منهم مع منظمة العمل الدولية في المنيا، والمبادرة الثانية كانت مع بنك الكويت الوطني. ويمكن المبادرات دي اللي بناء عليها يعني رئيس الجمهورية وصى بإنشاء مئات الآلاف من الوحدات في القرى. هي المهارة اللي احنا عاوزينها ايه؟ ان احنا بنستخدم الدانك بتاع الانيمالز في الستيبلز المختلفة، وبنعمل وحدات بايوجاز. عندنا 2 موديلز بنستخدمهم في مصر، اللي هو الموديل الشاينيز موديل والانديان موديل. دول يعني مناسبين للظروف بتاعتنا. وكان في يعني مبادرة البنك الوطني بيعملها في سوهاج، في بعض المدارس الصناعية في سوهاج الزراعية يتعمل فيها وحدتين. يمكن أنا يعني الموضوع ده هنتابعه، لأن أنا كلمت الدكتور علي أبو سنة اللي هو مستشار وزيرة البيئة، وقال لي they are in their way، محطوطين في الخطة اللي هم هيعملوها. فيعني يمكن قلنا طب احنا عاوزين بقى في المهن الجديدة اللي مبنية على الجدارات ندخل اللي هو بايوجاز تكنيشن. يبقى عندنا تكنيشن يقدر ينشئ وحدة البايوجاز، ما هياش عاوزة انجينيرنج، مش عاوزة مهندس يقوم بيها، لا هو الطالب بتاع دبلوم زراعة ده ممكن يكونوا مجموعات يشتغلوا بيها. وأتمنى في المدة المتبقية من الشغل بتاعنا بتاع مشروع TVET، وبعد كده شركاء تنمية آخرين يكملوا المبادرة دي. يعني ليها فوائد كتيرة جدا، أنا مش بقول عشان أنا شاركت فيها، لكن يكفي كمان إنها بتنتج باي برودكت يعني ممكن 2 هكتارز من الأرض يبقى فيه سماد عضوي، بدل ما استخدم أسمدة النشادر والنطرات استخدمها. التجربة دي كانت ابتدت مع الUNDP في محافظة بني سويف والفيوم، ومعانا مع ILO امتدت في المنيا، ودلوقتي بنك الكويت الوطني بيعملها في سوهاج. وإن شاء الله المدرسة الزراعية في سوهاج أو مدرستين هيبقى فيهم الوحدات دول، والمنهج ده هيبقى معمول. أخيرا يمكن في قطاع السياحة، ويعني برضو من ضمن الحاجات اللي كانت الدكتورة سهى في الويش ليست اللي بنشتغل عليها، اللي هو موضوع الايكو توريزم. الايكو توريزم ده برضو السياحة البيئية محتاجة بعض المهن اللي تقدر تشتغل على الموضوع بتاع السياحة البيئية. ويمكن انتوا يعني في ايطاليا بالذات في مثلا الاجرو توريزم، السياحة الزراعية. يعني انا رحت في تورينو كذا مزرعة، انت بتقضي اليوم في المزرعة دي، وبرضه هي ضمن الوظائف الخضراء. والناس اللي بتشتغل هناك يعني هم متدربين ان هم ازاي يحافظوا على البيئة، وفي امثلة وبيخلوا المدارس يزوروها. انا هختم يعني السلايد الأخيرة دي، إن ممكن ملايين الوظائف والمهن الجديدة تنشأ في الاقتصاد الأخضر، لكن خلق الوظائف ده جزء من الإكويشن، جزء من المعادلة، لكن تطوير قوى عاملة ماهرة بشكل مناسب أمر بالغ الأهمية. يعني إحنا لحد دلوقتي عندنا مهن في مصر، مهن بنجيب لها ناس تكنيشنز من خارج مصر عشان يعملوها. ويمكن ده الاتجاه المشروع تيفت مع شركاء التنمية مع وزارة التربية والتعليم الفني، ان الاوكيبيشنز اللي بتدخل الجديدة او المهن المبنية على الجدارات فيها اجزاء تتعلق بصيانة الالواح الشمسية وما يتم بالطاقة الشمسية او بطاقة الرياح. هختم بس تاني يعني ومعرفش، هو رجاء وطلب للدكتور مجاهد ان احنا نرتب مع اليو ان دي بي ان احنا نطبع الاس دي جيز جولز بالعربي، ودي موجوده اليو ان دي بي، ونجيب منهم بعض الجيمز اللي هي الكارد بلاينج كاردز، والولاد في المدارس الفنيه عندنا يلعبوا الجيم دي سهله. يعني انا شخصيا ممكن اعلمها لعدد كبير يعملها، عشان لما نيجي نشتغل ونقول لهم انت هتبقى المهنه بتاعتك دي هي موصوفه انها جرين جوب، انها جرين سكيل، انها مهاره خضراء. ويمكن بعد كده بقى مع السياحه ندخل في المهارات الزرقاء، يعني اللي هي البلو سكيلز. شكرا جزيلا، ارجو ما كنتش طولت دكتور.
شكرا دكتور مجدي على البرزنتيشن، وبرضك بعض الرسائل الهامه زي موضوع ان طبعا حاجات من بعض الملامح للجرين جوبز اوريدي اتحطت او اندمجت في بعض في المناهج بتاعت اللي هي مبنيه على الجدارات اللي طورتها وزاره التعليم والتعليم الفني. حاجات زي البايو جاس والايكو توريزم. انا عارف برضك البايو جاس هيبقى جزء من المراكز التميز اللي احنا بننشئها حاليا مع الكي اف دبليو. وطبعا زي ما حضرتك قلت هيبقى في وظائف هتخلق كثيرة في الجرين ايكونومي، لكن محتاجين نطور مهارات الشباب انها تقدر تشتغل الوظائف الجديدة دي. أخيرا يعني last but not least I would like to welcome Mr. Hiromichi Katamaya, who is joining I think from Paris virtually. And I know that UNESCO and UNIVOC has been monitoring the situation after COVID closely and during COVID. What are the latest development in issues like digitalization and green skills? We would like to hear from you, and then you will comment. You can also introduce the video that we will be watching about the BELT initiative after your intervention. Thank you very much for your presence with us today.
Yes, thank you very much, Ahmed. Thank you very much for inviting UNESCO to this very important meeting. So I'm Hiromichi Katayama. I'm based in UNESCO headquarters in Paris.
الصوت مش واضح.
Sorry. I hope you can hear me well. Yeah. So I'm working on TVET. And I want to talk about how UNESCO is to respond to the new laws, digital transformation and green economies. And the new UNESCO strategy for TVET, which is under
Mr. Hemoshiti, can you please distance your voice from the mic for a little bit?
Okay.
Yes, that's better.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yes, thank you. Much better.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I'm going to briefly explain the UNESCO new strategy for TVET. But before that, our colleague, UNESCO International Centers, they have prepared video recorded presentations to show how UNESCO has introduced.
No, sorry again. We need to distance your mic a little bit. It's not very clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's better now.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I think the colleague in UNESCO International Centers in Bonn, they have prepared the video recorded presentations regarding how UNESCO has introduced and implemented the new qualifications and competencies at the level of the TVET institutions. So first of all, I'd like to show the videos prepared by the project manager of this field project, Breaking Innovation by Learning TVET, prepared by the UNESCO and also by German Federal Institute for that BIPD. So could you please play the video first, and then I will explain the strategy. Thank you.
نعم لا هو احنا مش يعني احنا خلاص هو لسه ما خلص لا okay can you
Esteemed members of the TVET community, esteemed members of
اوكي طب نشغل الفيديو هنتفرج على فيديو كان بعتوه بردك اليونسكو عن مبادرة اسمها البلت. هي مبادرة في أفريقيا وأوروبا وجنوب شرق آسيا. فهيشرحوا لنا بس ايه البروجكت، ولو رجع تاني مستر هيموتشيتش هنسأله شوية أسئلة.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today at EduTech Egypt 2022. It's a pity that the current circumstances prevent us to be there with you today, enjoying of your company, knowledge, and expertise. My name is Wilson, and I'm the project manager for the BUILD project at UNESCO Univoc.
My name is Vera Haag. I'm the project manager for BUILD at the German Federal Institute for VET, BIBB in short, and it's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to present the BUILD project to you today via this video. The BUILD project focuses on Univoc centers in Europe, Africa, and Asia. So these are centers that are members of the global Univoc network. So, what themes are we working on with BUILD? We're working on 5 themes. Our overarching project theme and focus is new qualifications and competencies. And within this overarching theme, we look at the so-called 3 I's. So how do we effectively identify new qualifications and competencies? How do we integrate them adequately in curriculum and training regulations? And then thirdly, how do we implement them in TVET training practice? And this overarching topic is underpinned by 4 other themes. Those are digitalization, migration, greening, and entrepreneurship. And for the following 4 project years, we will set the dual transition greening and digitalization as our main focus. So we'll mostly look at those 2 themes, but we won't drop the other 2 themes. They will still remain within the scope of the project.
So the BUILD project is organized along 3 lines of work. And one common element among them is the exchange of knowledge, exchange of best practices between Europe, Africa, and Asia, because we have as a premises that each of the regions have the opportunity to learn and share in the BUILD project. And we do it, as I said, in 3 different ways. The first one is through our bridging line. And the bridging line comprises regional and global conferences about the themes of the BUILD project, namely new qualifications and competences, and for this next 4 years, digitalization, greening, and the dual transition. And we organize 4 of these events every 2 years. The next one will be organized in June in Finland, and you are all invited to take part on it. We also have what we call the innovation line. And the innovation line could be explained as our research line, where we delve into a topic that's pressing for the TVET community. So just as an example, and Vera will be able to explain that a little bit further down the presentation, we have just launched a publication on new qualifications and competencies. And the last and third and newest line is the learning line. It basically could be summed up in turning reflection into action. So what we are basically doing is creating capacity building tools based on the knowledge generated in our innovation line that will benefit TVET institutions across the world.
Okay, so now that you have learned about the broad lines of activities with the BID project, let's look with a bit more detail into each of these lines. First of all, the bridging line. As Wilson has already mentioned, with these bridging lines we have different events. We have, in a time span of 2 years, regional conferences in Europe, Africa, and Asia. And at the end of each of these 2-year cycles, we have a global conference, the BILD Learning Forum, where all 3 participating regions come together. During the past years, of course, due to COVID, we had to carry them out, those events, as fully digital conferences, but we're now slowly moving back to hybrid conferences. What happens during those events? Well, it's all about networking, peer learning, about best practice examples that we're presenting in the BID teams, about panel discussions and learning from each other, creating networks. So what else are we doing within our activity lines? The second line of activity is the so-called innovation line. This line is all about gathering knowledge and creating new knowledge together. So Wilson had mentioned already the work on new qualifications and competencies that we have been doing during the past 2 years. So with an expert group composed of members from Europe, Africa, and Asia, we worked on 3 volumes that all look at the theme of new qualifications and competencies, the identification, the integration, and the implementation of new qualifications and competencies. And why did we produce 3 volumes? Well, that is because each of the volumes looks at the perspective of different stakeholders within the TVET system. So we have a micro level that looks at the theme from the perspective of TVET providers. We have a meso level with the perspective of social partners, research organizations, or national bodies, and we have a macro level volume that is more on the governance and the perspective of ministries. And those 3 volumes are full of examples from different countries on prospective ways of actions, how to improve processes in TVET systems to better meet demand and supply with regard to new qualifications and competencies.
And our third line of work, or the third line of the BUILD project, is what we call the learning line. As I said, turning reflection into action. And here I'm going to share with you a very practical example of what we are doing in this line. So, as Vera mentioned, we developed these 3-volume publications based on the 3 I's approach, or identification, integration, and implementation of new qualifications and competencies. And we are now turning them into a self-reflection tool. We opened a call for expression of interest and selected 9 institutions from Africa, Asia, and Europe to co-develop this tool with us. So the tool aims to assess how prepared TVET institutions are to participate in what we call the 3I process. So we expect that at the end of the piloting phase of the self-reflection tool, institutions become aware of the role they can play, not only in delivering TVET, that's the usual business, but also how better to design curricula that are appealing for the society, and how they can assist the government or the TVET system in general to identify which qualifications and competencies are in need, since they are in the forefront. We want to identify the strengths of these institutions and try to document them in terms of innovation and learning practices, as explained by Vera. But we will also look at the opportunities for improvement that we identify during the process. And for this, we will suggest institutions to develop what we call a new qualifications and competences action plan to tackle a specific point or a specific opportunity to make a better use of their resources. And from the build project perspective, these workshops have the main goal of testing the tool, of seeing how reliable it is, how adherent it is to different institutions in different continents with different characteristics. So this is a process, it's an ongoing process, and it's part, and I mean, one of the main examples of what we are doing in the learning line.
Thank you everyone for your attention. We always enjoy these opportunities to present our project work to you, and please feel invited to join our activities, our diverse activities within the 3 lines. We're always looking for engaged TVET institutions to join us. Thank you.
Thank you for UNESCO, and interesting project for bridging innovation learning in TVET, the belt, and I encourage Egyptian institutions to participate. المؤسسات المختلفة طبعا من المؤسسات التعليم والفني والتدريب المهني. Mr. Katamaya, thank you for rejoining, and again, technology has its hiccups from time to time, so please, we just saw the video regarding the BELT project, and we would like to also hear from you about the latest developments and the outcomes of what you have observed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ahmed. I hope you can hear me well, better now. So the presentation, the recorded presentation made by our colleague was about the ongoing and new initiatives by targeting TVET institutions. But we also are doing a lot of other support by targeting our member states, including the ministries and also the TVET authorities. So as I mentioned earlier, we are now finalizing UNESCO strategy for TVET 2022 to 2029, which will be discussed at the executive board, and we hope that this will be approved by UNESCO executive board soon. So I'm going to briefly talk about how we are going to support our member states under this new TVET strategy. Its subtitle is Transforming TVET for Successful and Just Transition. So we are aiming at addressing the challenges from skills development and TVET in view of the several interlinked elements. And one of them is the recovery, economic recovery, and also the social recovery from this COVID pandemic. And also in some other countries, there are some other challenges, including the ongoing war in the Ukraine, Russia, and also in some other part of the world, there are some conflicts. So we have to support the recovery from this, recovery from those crises, including the COVID pandemic. And also we are paying attention to the technological changes, the Industry 4.0, and also I heard that some other speakers talked about the digital transformations. I think there is an increasing use of the, not only the ICT, but also the virtual realities, augmented realities, and also the, there are many discussions on metaverse, so we would like to address to this kind of technological changes. And also we would like to pay attention to the informalities. It's still in many of our member countries, the large number of people are employed in the informal sectors, and what kind of training should be provided to support those people, and how we can support their transition from the informal to formal economies, how we can ensure the provision of decent jobs for those people. That's also our interest. And also we would like to pay attention to the demographic transitions. A large number of young people is a challenge in this region, in the MENA regions, but in some other countries, the aging societies is becoming a big problem, including my home country, Japan, and also the, many other Asian countries. This is a big issue now. And last but not least, supporting the transition to sustainable societies in view of the climate change and etc. So we try to consider all of these interlinked elements, and we set 3 strategic priorities under these new TVET strategies. And one of the first priority is to develop skills for individuals to learn, work, and live, to live throughout their lives. So we like to take a lifelong learning approach, and we like to build and establish the flexible learning pathways. So we are not only paying attention to the skill-to-work transition, but also to support the people's transition within the labor market, work-to-work transition, because many people are changing their job throughout their lives and they need some training. And also, some people in the labor market, they may come back to the family home, and then they may rejoin the labor market. So each individual has its own agenda and its own priorities. So we need that we have to establish the flexible TVET and training systems to respond to the different needs of the individuals. So that's our first priority. And the second priority is to develop the skills for inclusive and sustainable economies. And we have already discussed the digitalization, digital transformation, and also the greening societies. So we'd like to continue to support these inclusive and sustainable economies, especially from the point of view of the digital societies and also the greening societies. UNESCO has just completed the regional support in coordination with the European Commission in these southern Mediterranean regions. And one of our activities was to use the digital competency framework established by the European Commission. And we are supporting some of the countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine, to develop the self-assessment tools for digital capacities, and also the teacher training system to support the digital transformations in coordination with the French public body called TIPS, using the EU digital competency framework. So we have produced some materials which can be used for Egypt as well. I think some of them are written in Arabic. So we should be able to continue to provide a digital support for the digital transformation in these regions. And also, one of our ongoing activities is in coordination with the OECD and the CEDEFOP, we are going to develop a tool to support the greening transitions on the work-based learning. So this may also be relevant to the context of Egypt, and we can promote the greening transition to work-based learning. And the third priority is the development for inclusive and peaceful societies. And particularly, we will be focusing on promoting TVET institutions as a place for social integration and also social cohesion. So these activities will be implemented with the UNESCO International Center of Work. But of course, we should be able to work with the Egyptian TVET institutions under these priorities. And there are some cross-cutting areas, and one of them is the data in order to ensure evidence-based policy making and policy implementation. UNESCO has a statistics institute based in Montreal, but we have systematically collected the information of the education system, but not necessarily on TVET. So we'd like to pay attention to what kind of the existing available data under not only under the Ministry of Education, but also under the private sectors, and also the Ministry of Labor. And we are trying to integrate all of those existing available data, both qualitative and quantitative, and do the analysis and try to make the informed and evidence-based policy advice to the NGO. So this is something we'd like to further promote strategy. So this is the short explanation of our new strategy for TVET, and we are willing to continue to work with the vision to further improve the TVET system. Thank you very much. I'm here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Katamaya. Unfortunately, some of the interventions was not clear, but thank you very much for your time. I got some aspects of your TVET strategy that are highlighted, like the sustainable economies, social integration, and the aging societies and the skills needed for that. Thank you very much. في وقت لسؤال أو اتنين من معلش لو في بعضك مداخلات من أنا اوكي لو في اي اسئله او مداخله او كومنت من ال اتفضل استاذ ابراهيم باشمهندس ابراهيم اتفضل.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, and I would like to thank the panel for this informative and fruitful information and discussions. In fact, I have two quick questions, one for Mr. Kari and the other one for Mr. Mike. Mr. Kari, I think you mentioned a very crucial point, which is the attitude. But I think we focused on the students' attitude. Do you think we should also focus on the teachers and the management attitude to engage them to be change agents to enhance our process and our next steps to achieve our goals and success? Do you think we should involve them, and how can we involve them to be change agents also for the teachers and the management? For Mr. Mike, I think Coursera will play a vital role as a change agent for the digital transformation, and I know that Coursera provide different types of courses targeting behavior competencies and the managerial competencies also, but what if we focused also on the technical competencies the students should know to implement their work activities? Can we customize some sort of courses extracted from the curriculum studied in the vocational schools and to be uploaded on this platform and to be accessible for the students to enhance their knowledge and skills also? Thank you for your patience and answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim Abed from Hassan Alam Developments. Carrie, please first about the attitudes.
Thank you for the question. It is a very important question. To give you a little bit of perspective, Africa is now the 5th continent that I'm working on the vocational, technical and vocational education, and I started my career in making changes in vocational education in Finland. From my point of view, yes, we can help the teachers and the school management to adapt to the changes. There are a couple of things that we need to take in consideration. First of all, we need to help all of them to understand in depth why. Why do we need this? The second thing is we need to help especially teachers who by research are a little bit more security oriented than the average people. Teachers to understand that the change and the teacher's commitment and eventually the teacher's competence that we expect from them is not a threat to their existing knowledge and skills as a teacher. So we need to work on the area of emotional intelligence. And then the third one is we need to get the school management and the general management to see the benefits also in monetary wise about the change, and hence through that to start to build the culture. From my point of view, if you want to talk more about this, I can give you a week's discussion about the area, so please just come in and talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Mike, very interesting question about how can we include more technical, vocational training courses on the platform.
It's a very good question, and thank you for it. So the question, as I understood it, was how can we empower TVET to create its own courses on the platform to make it specific to the students that it's teaching? The simpler answer is yes, we can do this now, and it is happening now. So when an institution is using Coursera, they have access to all of the thousands of courses that come from all of our university partners and our industry partners, but they also have access to the same authoring capability that those partners use to create their courses. So any college or university using Coursera could create its own courses using the same tools that University of London or Yale or Imperial College or Google are using to create their certificates and their fully online degrees. And a good example of this, and actually this is happening in Egypt already. So we have universities like Ain Shams University, Al Alamein International University, so they're starting to author their own courses. But an example of how this is integrated is African Nazarene University in Kenya is one of our earliest customers in Africa. And they're a faith-based university. And they have a computer science course, for example. And one of the courses that they're using from Coursera is Introduction to Python Programming. It's a basic course, everyone should take it, whatever field you're in. But before any student is allowed to take that course, they are required to take a course that African Nazarene University created themselves, which is faith-based approaches to Python programming. So they have to look at the ethics of programming before they're actually allowed to program themselves. And that is a course that they created themselves, they put on the platform, and they've integrated it with the courses that are available from other partners.
Thank you. شكرا لحضراتكم. معلش احنا هنضطر ننهي الجلسة. I would بشكر panelists. I thank you very much for your contributions, and welcome to EduTech. Thank you.